The cost of a single puff. In a quiet town, nestled between the mountains and the sea, lived a man named Thomas. Thomas had always been a picture of health, strong, vibrant, and full of life. He had a loving wife, Emily, and a young son, David, who adored him. But like many, Thomas had a vice: he was a smoker. It began in his early 20s, a casual habit picked up at social gatherings, a way to fit in with his friends. At first, it was just 1 or 2 cigarettes a day, but as the years passed, the habit grew. Thomas found solace in the small white stick that seemed to calm his nerves and ease his worries. Little did he know, each puff was slowly weaving a web of destruction. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Thomas lit up a cigarette on his porch. He inhaled deeply, feeling the familiar burn in his lungs, the fleeting sense of relief. But something was different this time. As he exhaled, he noticed a slight wheeze in his breath, a sound that hadn't been there before. He brushed it off, thinking it was just a cold. Over the next few weeks, the wheezing grew worse. Thomas found himself coughing more frequently, often waking in the middle of the night, gasping for air. His once strong and steady hands now trembled slightly as he lit each cigarette, but the habit was too ingrained, too comforting to let go. Emily watched with growing concern. She had seen the changes in Thomas, his energy waning, his once bright eyes now dull and tired. She pleaded with him to quit, to think of their son, to think of their future. But Thomas, stubborn and in denial, would shrug off her concerns with a weak smile and a promise to cut back. David, their young son, had started to avoid sitting next to his father during their evening family time. The smoke that clung to Thomas's clothes and hair made David's eyes water and his throat burn. But more than that, David could sense the change in his father, the distance that was growing between them, the heavy sadness that seemed to hang over their home. One day, while playing at school, David suddenly collapsed. His teacher, alarmed, rushed him to the nurse. It was discovered that David had developed asthma, triggered by prolonged exposure to secondhand smoke. The news hit Emily like a freight train. The realization that her son was suffering because of Thomas's habit was too much to bear. That night, as Emily sat by David's bedside, watching him struggle to breathe through an inhaler, she made a decision. She confronted Thomas, her voice trembling with fear and anger. She showed him the doctor's report, the diagnosis that had shaken her to the core. Thomas, seeing the pain in his wife's eyes and the frail state of his son, finally understood the gravity of his actions. He had always thought of smoking as his own personal choice, his own burden to bear. But now he saw that his habit had poisoned not just his own body, but the lives of those he loved most. Determined to change, Thomas sought help. He joined a support group, started using nicotine patches, and took up running to reclaim his health. The journey was arduous, every day a battle against the cravings that gnawed at him, the withdrawal symptoms that left him irritable and exhausted. But with each step forward, he felt a little stronger, a little more in control. As time passed, the house grew lighter. The air became fresher, free from the oppressive stench of smoke. David's health began to improve, and the bond between father and son was slowly mended through shared activities and open conversations. But the scars remained. Thomas's lungs, damaged from years of abuse, would never fully heal. The fear of relapse always lingered in the back of his mind, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. He became an advocate, sharing his story with others, warning them of the insidious nature of smoking, not just for the smoker, but for everyone around them. Through his talks and community outreach, Thomas met countless others who had suffered similar fates, people who had lost loved ones to lung cancer, children who had developed chronic illnesses from secondhand smoke, families torn apart by addiction. Each story reaffirmed his commitment to stay smoke-free and to fight against the tobacco industry that continued to profit off human misery. In the twilight of his life, Thomas sat on the same porch where he had smoked his first cigarette. The sky, once again, was painted in hues of orange and pink. But this time, there was no cigarette in hand, no smoke swirling in the air. Instead, there was peace, a hard-won peace that came from knowing he had chosen life, not just for himself, but for those he loved. He knew the battle was far from over, that millions still struggled with the addiction that had nearly claimed him. But he also knew that every story, every voice raised in awareness, brought the world one step closer to a future free from the grasp of smoking.